Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the City of Farmers Branch Study Session meeting. It is Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. The time is 3 p.m. Councilmember Ratana isn't here, but given her line of work, I'm assuming it's important. So with that, we will just jump in with A1, discuss regular agenda items. Councilmember Norwood.
Nothing for me, Mayor.
Councilmember Len.
Thank you. I have a question regarding H3, if Mark is here. In reviewing the bids that came in for this project, I was just curious why there was such a disparity amongst the bidders for one of the items in particular. Traffic control throughout the project is what it's classified as. In the first page, you got Jim Bowman, urban, info construction, CI pavement. And I couldn't help but think on CI pavement, they bid $1,290, or was that just an addition error? Because the others were 44,000, 50,000, 27,000, 2,000, 123,000, 51, 85, and 46. So, I mean, there's all over the board.
Yeah, these are all annual prices that we're going to be paying as we move forward with our pavement, any pavement repairs. What we do is we take hypothetical numbers, quantities that we've used the year before, and we apply those, and they give us a price associated with those numbers. So that's the way we evaluate those. Contractors will always, they'll typically put more money into certain numbers that they know they're probably going to do more of or something. So, but we evaluate it across the board, okay? And the low bidder was $200,000 less than the next guy. So regardless of what we don't really look at what they charge per item. It's really, we look at what we're going to pay for all of these items overall.
Okay.
One item may be skyrocket, it's like a toilet that costs $600, a toilet lid or something. But you may pay something a little higher for one item, but the next item is probably going to be lower. Okay. But overall, Bowman was $200,000 less for the entire, for the entire number that we looked at, the total, okay, than the next lowest bidder.
Okay, well, it was concerning because I just saw a couple of them that were just so far out of whack on the low side, and I didn't know whether they...
It's how contractors, where they actually going to put their money, their profit and overhead, how they're going to move it around, and that's how they do it.
Okay, all right. Thank you on that. Mm-hmm. And then that... well, I guess on H4, if you will, Council, I don't know if anything has changed on this project, which is the barn project, and whether we have amassed money in the hotel motel fund. I notice it's on the consent agenda, and so I guess I'll wait to see if we have discussion or further discussion about that.
Anything else?
No.
Councilmember Baumgartner?
Nothing at this time.
Councilmember Blackson?
Nothing at this time.
Councilmember Ratana, you're now on the hot seat. Anything for A1? Which is just regular agenda items. Anything you want to discuss this time? No? Okay. Well, then we will move on to A2, receive an update on the barn project at the Farmers Branch Historical Park. Mr. Mashburn.
All right. Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. Mike Mashburn, Director of Parks and Recreation. I'm here to talk hopefully one more time about the barn project. This has been a multi-year project for us here, And thank you to those that were on the subcommittee early on, Councilman Baumgartner, Councilman Norwood, and Councilman Lynn. Thank you for your input on some of this as well. So what I'm going to show you today is hopefully the final iteration and get some feedback on the look, feel, and layout of the barn project. So we're not voting on any numbers at this point. We're not looking to move forward anytime soon. It's just, can we finalize what this looks like, the layout, the placement within the park, and how this is going to feel. So a little background for those that are unfamiliar. We started this several years ago, but we really ramped up activity with this in November 2019 when we went out for contracts with O'Brien Architect, as well as civil engineering and geotechnical services. Today, all work is now complete with those. This was designing phase 1 and phase 2 of the barn. Phase 2, if you'll remember, is show space, museum space, if you will, and an optional element to be added on later. But phase 1 was a primary concern at this point. And the Historical Preservation and Restoration Board has unanimously approved this item. And I want to thank those that had heavy input, Warren Wetzel, Johannes Helkema, that were both on our subcommittee for that. So we encountered several challenges when we looked to see where this would be placed. With the 100-year and 500-year floodplains, placement was challenging to say the least, with the size that we had determined with the subcommittee that we wanted to do, as well as the placement to have optimal views of the meadow for special events, VIP events perhaps. We wanted it tilted at an angle. We wanted the size to be roughly 10,000 square feet with both phases. And so where we have it along Ford Road and the existing brick pathway seemed to be the optimal placement for this. You'll see the red is phase 1, and that's what we're talking about. Between that and the optional meeting room, that's about 8,100 square feet. Large awnings that were covered for the porch is about 1,400 square feet. That's unconditioned space, but that was of interest to the subcommittee. And in phase 2, we have about 2,400 square feet of museum space. So this is phase 1. One of the things we talked about with the subcommittee and through our research is we wanted seating for 200 guests if a wedding was to take place. So that's round tables, enough space in between to comfortably get in and out. And Councilman Lynn, thank you for your input on that. We took that into account. And so that large ballroom space can be used for any variety of things, but 200 people comfortably for a wedding. If it was road seating or something of that nature, you'd get a bit more in there. We do have a bride and groom suite, ample storage, prep area, serving area, office space, and as I mentioned earlier, an optional meeting space that's about 600 square feet. So renderings, again, we're looking for, is this the look we wanted to achieve? We were trying to merge old with new, and we kind of fashioned the park as a walk through time. So you'll see some traditional barn-like elements with some modern touches that kind of finishes out this space. So you have the rustic look with some more updated finishes on the exterior. Here's a side view. And you see the large bay windows that would open up to the meadow to give you prime viewing of any stage setup that we were to have out there, any event. Here's a pathway leading up to the entrance of the barn. And then here's the interior. Again, you have that rustic feel, but with a nice touch of class that can be used for several different events. Doors that can be open and shut. I think O'Brien did a really nice job here, and we wanted your input on what you thought as well. Just another view of that. And again, the large windows, as I mentioned earlier. So that was one of the primary things we tried to really maximize in this space. So considerations, again, we're just looking for placement. Is this the size you want? Is this the layout you wanted? This is what you intended to have when we started these barn discussions. So if so, we'd look to approve this later on tonight. On the consent agenda. Option 2, we can always go back, make modifications if we wanted to do that, or we can table the discussion for the future. So I'll open it up to questions at this point.
Councilmember Ratana, do you have any questions?
Thank you so much. One of the questions that I had was related to, and I think you'd already kind of alluded to this before in a previous presentation, was related to revenue. And do you by any chance have projections of the revenue for the event space, maybe over a year based on projections that you've seen in other similar venues?
Yeah, I think when we initially rolled that out, that was probably before your time. I can certainly send that out to you, but there
Sure.
were a few different considerations there. One was kind of a worst-case scenario, what it will cost to operate, as well as what we anticipate revenue possibly being. There was about a $90,000 a year loss to start off. There was a best-case scenario that had us being net positive on that. And so what I've always said is if we're okay with the worst-case scenario, we move forward, but we got to be comfortable with that. I do think there's a chance that we can exceed. It would probably take some ramping up to do that. But again, this has a lot of merits for our special events, being able to not cancel outdoor events because we can hold them in here. We can offer VIP experiences in here. And so there's a lot of things that could be positive without considering just is this a cash flow positive venture. But I can send all of that to you along with the research that substantiates those claims.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
That is all I have for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Norwood?
Mike, thanks very much for all the work on this. I'm trying to recall, but I think we started that subcommittee in 2017.
2018, I believe, but yeah, very,
2018,
very close. Yeah.
and it took us a few years. We had
2
got
years.
the strategic plan approved earlier this year, and now we've got the plans for the barn. Now, these are full architectural drawings.
Yes.
And do we have an estimate of the construction costs?
I knew you were going to ask that. Yeah, so we did go to 2 different construction companies to get an opinion of probable cost. They're kind of varied. We're looking in just above $3 million on one, a little bit further, closer to the $4 million range on another one. Now, again, those are looking at them a little bit closely with our own staff. I think there's some things that we can value engineer out of that to kind of bring the cost down. But as of today, those are the dollars we're looking at.
Okay, those are construction costs, not costs to outfit with tables and chairs and...
Yeah, those are the construction costs. Yeah, there would be some tables and chairs and some other fees associated.
Okay, and what did O'Brien give you as far as a timeline?
About a year. Gosh, I want to say it was 6 to 8 months. I want to say would be a construction timeline for that.
16 months, okay. Well, thank you very much. It's my understanding that the Hotel Motel Fund is a little bit depleted right now, and at one point we had like 1.2 million balance there, and how low is that now?
I can't speak to the exact number on that. I know a lot of that is used to operate the park this year because, like you said, the money's not coming in like it normally was. So I would guess, Charles, a lot of that's probably going to be depleted by the end of the year, especially with COVID now. We don't know how long this is going to last. So, yeah, it's in a rough spot right now.
Yeah. Yeah, as I recall, we originally talked about a 10,000 square foot barn, and this looks like it's around there. It's a little bit less than that, but when you add the phase 2, it gets over 10.
It's just over 10, yeah.
And the last question I had was that the economic analysis, the case study that you did on how successful this barn could be and as a revenue generating project.
Yeah.
Do you think your initial assumptions on that are still valid given COVID? And, I know people are still getting married, but, they're delayed them. They've been delayed. And so, by the time we got this thing constructed, one would hope that, we'd be back to a more normal operation, but.
Yeah, that's a tough question because we're in a time where we just don't know how people are going to react coming out of this. I think you're going to have a portion of the population that aren't comfortable around a lot of people all at once for a while, and may never be. And then you'll have some that are perfectly fine with it. My own experience is I've been several places now, and it's a mix, right? I have friends that don't go anywhere. I have people that are ready to party or do whatever they want to do in a social gathering. Coming out of COVID, if there was a vaccine for it, I would say that's fairly valid. Probably bump it down just a little bit because, like I said, people aren't going to stop getting married. Probably not going to stop inviting people to their special day too, right? So that's where a lot of the dollars are going to come. I think the challenge is going to be the special events portion of it. And so we've seen our events ramp up a little bit more as this goes on. For those that were at Bloom and Bluegrass, I don't know, Councilman Lynn, were you there? Pretty good attendance for that both days. We ran out of social circles actually on Friday night for sure, I know. So good attendance. I think there's a large portion that are ready to get back out and try things. But again, we're going to see a little bit of a hit. So when we talk about rentals, the closest thing we can associate is the building rentals we do now and the field rentals. Field rentals are full bore right now. People are still playing sports, and we're doing really well there. The indoor rentals were still limited, so I don't know what people will do exactly if they were allowed to. But again, my hope is by the time this is built, fast forward to a year, 2, 3 years from now, we found a way to live with it, or we found a cure, right? One of the two. So.
One thing that I think is probably important for those that watch this presentation online or afterwards is that we talked about the potential sources of revenue for this. I'm gonna list off some, and if I don't get them all, if you could help me out here, but we talked about weddings, that there's a real market for wedding venues, especially close to Dallas. We traveled to one, and that was 45 minutes from here, and it was doing a booming business. VIP experiences with our special events like Blooming Bluegrass, where people would pay extra to be in the barn, have a more VIP experience there. And potentially to offset the cost of holding other city events, that, like our annual boards and commissions. We could have that there. We could have different events there. Is there anything I missed? I just want people to understand that there's many sources of revenue that if we built this, it could generate.
Sure. Yeah, there's corporate retreats that could be a possibility. If you've looked at the programming numbers, you'll notice the historical park in particular is really ramping up with what they're doing. This will allow an event like Day of the Dead that's coming up this or Thursday, actually, in a couple days. We're nearly sold out on that event, but weather could be a little bit iffy, right? So that would allow this to happen comfortably indoors, rain or shine. And so there's several events like that we do that we're just limited by indoor-outdoor space. We talked about at the time, I had a list of, off the top of my head, I want to say it was 28 events that were canceled at the historical park due to weather. Smaller events, 30 to 100 plus people, but those could still happen if we had a barn. So, yeah, several options there, several ways to make it work.
Yeah, and finally, my last question, just so everybody knows, if the item on the consent agenda is purely to approve the design.
Correct.
And the architectural plans, which we've already paid for.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So,
Yeah,
thank
no dollars anytime soon.
Good.
Without
Well,
council.
you have my full support on this. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Councilmember Lund?
My kudos to the staff for pulling off a good event
Thanks.
this past weekend. And don't forget, folks, we have events this weekend also, so come out to the historical park. As far as the design goes, I really don't have any other suggestions. I think that this incorporates a pretty good basic event space, at least what I'm used to working at. So the things that sort of stick out in my mind just looking forward is obviously the hotel motel fund needs to replenish itself so we can get to a point where that can fund the construction of this project. Number two is parking. And parking is going to be a big consideration in parking and access, I should say, for this. And so I would almost like to see if we're going to present this and if we're still looking at a plan for Ford Road, that it all be packaged together, because there's going to be expense with that and we need to be prepared for that. And if the hotel motel fund can absorb the parking reconfiguration, I think that would be well worth it. Again, another forward-looking item is an updated business plan. While barn weddings are a fad today, and I can't predict the future, but we don't know how long they'll last. So we need to have other activities in mind, so we're not just relying on one source of income as being our major funder. Although if we do this right, it may become that. So I'm excited about that if this is going to become reality. The other thing is when we get to another time down the road, obviously getting updated costs for all the related items, lights, sound, AV, tables, chairs, linens. I don't know what we're going to get into in terms of supplying versus what we would expect a caterer to bring in. So those are concerns. And if we have to have separate or a secondary lights, AV, sound for the meeting room space versus the big room. So, those were just some of the things that stuck out in my mind, and we'll see where it goes.
Sure. And all great points. To your point about parking, we do have a plan for that. I think we were able to do 23 spaces along Ford Road on angled parking. That wouldn't cost too much, so that's an option there. We do have space inside the park, but again, if we're going to have something with hundreds and hundreds of people, we're going to have to look at other options for sure. And we do have the AV numbers, but we can update those as we get a little bit closer to this perhaps coming to fruition. And you're right, business models may need to change, or the way people are doing business. Maybe weddings get scaled down to 50 people, and we don't need a 200 space thing. But I think there's events and other things we can be creative with for sure.
Councilmember Baumgartner.
Yes, I've got a few questions and comments. First of all, the worst-case scenario, the $90,000 a year loss for the first year and going forward, that is not taking money from the hotel motel fund. That includes all the financing and everything.
So the assumptions that we made were that this would be a pay-as-you-go venture, and so there wouldn't be any financing associated with that. Now, if we were going to go that route, then we'd have to adjust that.
Okay.
Definitely.
So what you're saying is that hotel motel fund would have to come up with $4 million, or probably plus after you throw in the tables and chairs, and we are going to delay this, so costs will likely go up, right? So, okay, just looking for clarification on that. I have a real question about the layout, and if I could walk through it.
Sure.
We have 2 storage areas, and we have a meeting room, and while the wedding is going, and a groom's room, while the wedding would be going on, up to that, the storage room would be empty. That seems to be prime space. When you look at that would be empty. You would be having a meeting going on during the wedding. Extremely unlikely for that. And it just seems like when you put all that together, I know there are other events that we would hold there, but somehow that storage space, it seems like once the chairs are pulled out and pulled into the ballroom and be used like that almost becomes another meeting room. And the layout, as I look at the design on that, I'm not certain that, thinking through the use of the space, that there might be a better, you're talking about moving walls inside, and that's something that could be decided later, before construction. But it just looks to me like, there's a potential for not the best use of space as we go through that. The storage area could easily become a groom's room, or the meeting room could become a groom's room. Not really certain that we need that space and might be able to utilize that for something else, maybe storage to, and expand the size of the ballroom. And the picture shows upstairs, but we agree that we're not going to do anything upstairs, correct?
Correct.
It's kind of a faux place. And then, I agree with Councilman Lynn on, understanding the lights, the tables, the electronics, the parking. And the other thing I'm concerned about is, while there's certainly a push for the museum portion of this, I don't think there is universal agreement at least not from my point of view, that the museum is a definite need for the future. And what I wouldn't want to do is I wouldn't want to push something through that future councils come back and they look at later and say, oh, this was approved by the previous council, the museum is part of this. You know, a couple of years later, it's time to fund this. I have a concern about that. I don't know if other councilmen have. I'd be interested in hearing if others have that concern as well. So I'm in full support of the project, right? I'm just, making some comments.
Yeah. And you may, I know we've all slept a little since this whole thing started, so it might be harder to recommend. But all of these elements were the culmination of the subcommittee meeting and saying what were the must-haves and can we fit it within 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
I'm with you. That's why the meeting room was kind of off to the side, so it's an easy omission, because like you said, there's not going to be a meeting room and an event, most likely, probably going on at the same time. In storage, you may recall, I can't remember which location we looked at, but they had the storage just outside the building. So maybe that's a way to scale down the price just a little bit, build a smaller structure to store tables and chairs.
Or expand the ballroom size.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
anyway.
Like, Councilman, if I was going to suggest anything as a change to this, it would have been to put the storage outside, because there may be events where you need to have clear room, or it's all chair seating, and all those tables might not have to go someplace. And so where on the drawing you could build an annex out there to store tables and chairs and whatnot, but and then make that more usable space. So that was the only other thought, but
Definitely.
other than that.
Councilmember Baumgartner, anything else? Thank you. Councilmember Blackson.
I think everyone's already picked up kind of what I was thinking. My thoughts were that the storage space looked just, I'm not a space planner, but it looked kind of out of whack. So I thought, why not use, a temporary wall or whatnot? They have those accordion style, old school, that they chop up large rooms into small rooms and let that be used there. And other than that, I would think that I didn't think of adding anything to the outside like Councilman Lynn suggested. I just thought about what would be a better way to use that space. So I'm in full support. I just wanted to share my thoughts.
I'm in support as well. Only comment I'll make to the parking is, being the age that I am, I've been to a lot of weddings and a lot of events, and one thing that a lot of people do is valet parking. And if you're going to do a wedding at a place like this, I would assume that's definitely an option that is funded by whoever's hosting the event, and an easy solution with the parking accommodations that we've arranged for all of our large events, where we obviously can't accommodate it at the historical park as it is now. So, other than that, I think good work. It's a long time coming and a lot of effort. And so I want to thank not only the subcommittee, but the Historical Park Committee for all their work and effort, and for the Parks Department as well. So just appreciate that. And it sounds like everyone's mostly in support. So does anyone need or feel the need to take it off consent right now?
No, Mayor, I just had a point of clarification. So I know we made a lot of suggestions, and so just to make sure, I'm definitely in support of this, but with all of the suggestions that were made, if we move forward with it on consent and vote in favor of it, some of those minor tweaks are still going to be able to be done thereafter, even though we're approving the plan as you have presented it, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I would say the motion would probably include with modifications to the storage, eliminating that so it's one full space. And then my opinion, what I'm hearing, I guess, is approving phase 1, tabling phase 2 for a later date. Is that?
Okay, so we would need to add the specific modifications to the agenda item in order for us to be able to move forward with it accordingly, correct? Okay.
Yeah, I believe so. Right, Charles, we'd have to make that motion to.
Because I think ideally, I would hate to hold it back, because I'm definitely in support of this, but I would hate for us to make the modification and then come back and realize from a consultant that, because, and the reason I say that too is taking out that storage you're going to have, and again, because I'm planning for a wedding, you're going to have, seen a lot of venues, you're going to have some type of wall to be able to set up for a band or some of that sort. And when I looked at all the other areas, they all either have windows, have doors, and so you need to have something there. But to my colleague's point, maybe it is just a temporary wall of sorts, but the other thing I do want to have us consider is that the bride and groom suites are very unique and specific, and they are a draw for a lot of these venues, and so, or when selecting them, and so I would hate for us to make that multi-use for other things, because that's something that kind of usually has to stay the way it is, because it's designed and decorated in a way. And so I would hate for us to move forward with this, but then have to bring it back to, which we can. I just wanted to, again, clarify what exactly we need to do if we're going to want to make those modifications on this item to be able to move it forward.
Okay. Well, John speak, and then Charles.
I just wanted to respond to that because it seems to me, and I'll defer to Charles and to our legal counsel, is that when you go out for bid, that's when you want to strike out these things. If we eliminate them now, we're saying in our infinite judgment and our wisdom as a council here that we've determined the storage space no longer needs to be here, it needs to be outside. When that, in fact, may not be the case, and it may not be the best solution for us. And so I think that unless the lawyers tell us differently, we ought to leave it as a package. It's clear from the guidance in this meeting that we're only concerned with phase 1, not phase 2 at the current time, and that the bid package should be adjusted at the time and go before the council for it, because it'll have to come up for funding and ultimate approval to go forward out to bid. So that's my 2 cents on it.
And I appreciate that. Again, I just wanted a point of clarification because we are voting on this, and so I want to make sure that we didn't have to make any of the modifications, that we can just vote on it as is, and then later on we'll have the opportunity to make any changes that we need to make. But I definitely don't want us to hold this up. I just want to make sure.
Charles.
Yeah. I echo what Councilman Norwood mentioned. Keep in mind that, in terms of funding, if we're considering pay-as-you-go funding using the hotel motel fund, this is not going to happen for 3 to 4 years. And so you're looking at probably a future council that may like having storage the way it's displayed. So this is not the final iteration of where I think it's probably going to land, but just want to make you aware that what we're trying to do tonight is just to say, okay, we spent a significant amount of money to get full design plans, and while we have the architect essentially under contract, that we should at least kind of finalize those plans and put this project on hold until funding is available. And as I mentioned, I have a feeling that a future council is going to have some other modifications as well. So it right now might not be the time to get really in the nitty gritty about some of those elements that we talked about.
Does anyone else have any other comments as it relates to the barn? Okay. Mike, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is A3, Art and Culture Committee's Mural and Public Art Placement Projects. Mr. Land.
John Land, Deputy City Manager. Mayor and Council, thank you very much. We have a very talented Art and Culture Committee that has been working on a number of projects. 2 of those we'd like to share with you this evening. This happens to be very likely Bronson's last study session. And I know one of the things that he has consistently requested is to have some update on a famous birthday. So with that, does anybody have any guesses about October 27th? Hearing none. Happens to be Teddy Roosevelt, our 26th president. And looking at a quote that would tie in with this night, the greatest doer must also be a great dreamer. And I think we have a very great council and committee that works very hard on not just doing, but also dreaming of bigger and better things. One other artistic tie with Teddy Roosevelt, he's also featured prominently on our probably most famous sculpture, and that's Mount Rushmore. There's actually 4 individuals who are on there. Does anybody know who the other 3 are? We have some students in the audience.
Use your microphone.
I think I generally heard it. It's actually Bronson Blackson, who is the father of the Art and Culture Committee. We have Natalie Masaleo, who is chairing our Sculpture Committee, obviously Teddy Roosevelt, and then Matthew Peters, who is in charge of the Mural project on the side of the Firehouse Theater. With that, you may have read that from a staff level, we have a very talented individual, Maria Minter, who is taking on some additional responsibilities and is now our Recreation and Culture Manager. She is taking on a much larger role with the committee, and with that, I'm going to turn this over to her, now that the audience is warmed up, for her to introduce our 2 projects. Maria?
Thank you. That was fantastic. I can't believe I have to follow that. Again, Maria Minter, Recreation and Culture Manager. We've got some talented students here from Brookhaven College, and Natalie, who's, as John mentioned, is with our committee, and they're going to talk to you about updates for the sculpture, so I will turn it over to them. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure we got, yes, the next, okay, there we go. Is it just that? Yeah.
Hello, thank you for having us come again. Again, I'm Natalie Meslow. I teach at Brookhaven College, or Brookhaven campus, Dallas College. And I'm the sculpture professor there, and I think this started 3 years ago, perhaps, when John came to us and asked if our classes would be interested in designing a sculpture for the Mustang Station area, and we were very excited to say yes. That has taken multiple iterations of design and collaboration, and I've had 3 or 4 classes since then of students coming in and out. And then once we finally decided on the structure, which is the image you see on the right, which is 3 pillars, and then the figure of the woman, so you get the scale. It's about 13 feet tall. We thought it would be a great idea to have students design screens that would go on top of them, sort of like you would wrap a car with advertisements. And so I chose our 3 most talented painters who make amazing work, and I thought they would be great at collaborating to create the first iterations of the screen. So the idea is that these screens would last about 2 years, 2 to 3 years, depending on weather and where, and then hopefully can be replaced with maybe an art challenge or more students, or however you want to. We haven't decided that yet, but here's another iteration. So this would be in the sort of the back circle in the parking lot, middle of the parking lot. So each pillar, there's like a base and then a top. And these are some of the designs that the students came up with. And I would like to let them tell you sort of where these ideas came from and
Just name and address for them as well, please.
Oh, for me?
Well, if you just give me Dallas Colleges, we'll use it for all of them, but then just their names as they address the microphone.
My name is Rebecca Kim. And
I'm Raul Nájera.
Hello, my name is Kenya Diaz.
So what we came up with was, well, we all did like a couple of little designs to kind of like show kind of like what Farmers Branch is about. And I've been to the 4th of July celebration here, and it's always great. So I was like, okay, let's do fireworks, because that's always fun here. You know, I've been here for the fireworks, and it's always great. And you know, I like how everything stays green here, so I remember seeing the new signs y'all put kind of like entering Marshland and 635. They changed colors. I thought that was a great idea, so I was like, okay, so they have to be colorful. So I did the one with the fireworks. I think you did.
Yeah, so I decided to focus on the kind of the history of Farmers Branch with the grapes. So there is these vines of grapes, and I mixed it in with there's some imagery of like butterflies, and that was kind of referencing Brookhaven campus. And we have this butterfly garden that they actually have this whole project behind it where they mark butterflies to mark their migration pattern, which I thought would be kind of an interesting representation of the school overall. And
yeah, and I think another important part of the designs for us was that, you know, we wanted to represent Brookhaven or Farmers Branch, but then also add in Brookhaven because it's been such an important part for us. And so it was kind of this mergence of things that we knew about Farmers Branch, but also I think like personal elements and part of our story. And another thing that we did add was the technology too. So these were actually started off as sketches and hand-drawn images, but then we started taking it into these iPads that we actually started working with at school. And we took these different images, different sketches, and then began to kind of collage them together, and that's how we came up with the production.
Have any questions?
Well, first I want to say thank you very much for your time, energy, and effort. I know this is something we've been looking forward to, especially as we're still waiting to open the restaurant park. But I know it's coming, hopefully sooner rather than later. And this will be a key piece and a focal part of that development, and just the concepts, the ideas, and the way you took not only from the community, but from also kind of Brookhaven and what's inspired you here in the city of Farmers Branch, I think is just absolutely phenomenal. And just appreciate your effort and willingness to share this with us here today. So, Councilmember Ratana, do you have anything?
Not a question, more of a comment. I see three different things that really make Farmers Branch unique here. I see our parks. I even see our rose garden here, which is amazing. I see our community through our events, and I see our history. Those are three really major elements for our city, and so you captured them marvelously. So I just wanted to thank you again for all of the work that you put into it. I think this is going to be a great asset to our area. So thank you all so much.
Councilmember Norwood.
I echo everybody, and this is really great. I really like the idea that this could even change seasonally, so that we could have, if we had a special event or something, we could change it. The only question I have is that how easy or hard is it to change out these overlays?
The screens. We're working with Chris Judy, who is a sculptor, and he does several public sculptures, and he seemed to feel like it wasn't too terribly difficult. I think the most challenging part was making sure you could scan it in a high enough resolution for them to be blown up this large. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's too terribly difficult. I honestly have never done it myself, but it's just like you put wraps on a car. So I couldn't tell you specifically, but
the wraps on a car, they kind of stick on, right?
It's like a vinyl.
And so if you pull these off, would it ruin them, or could you save them and reapply them?
Oh no, you couldn't save them. I mean, it's kind of a one-off, one-on, one-off.
Okay.
That
was my question. I didn't know if we could like swap them out, like get a bucket loader and swap them out.
They wouldn't be seasonal. I mean, they would, cost the cost too. So however much you want to change it, you can, but that have to be tied into the cost of it.
Well, thanks to the team. This has been a long time coming, but it was well worth the wait.
Councilmember Lynn.
So I'm, regarding the wraps, single use. So, and just to give you an idea, I think we paid about $3,000 for vehicles at the radio station to get them done, or maybe $2,500, something like that. So I don't know how, again, I'm still trying to figure how big these are and whatnot, but, I'm still partial to the first design, which was sort of on the order of this, but it was a more, many more columns, 360, which I really would have liked, and a larger sculpture like that, because this is a big focal point. And then you could have put a light wash on it, and have multi-changing lights on the ground shining up on it to illuminate it. But I guess everything's going to boil down to, is there a funding need required for this? You have any idea or estimate of what we're looking at?
I don't. John has all the information.
So this was in the TIF budget. So it is designed, it's under fabrication right now, and they're going to pour footings and the piers, and it will be installed. It's kind of a turnkey operation. And if you may recall, originally, this was designed to be in the very center. And there was going to be 5 of the arches, and they each represented the 5 founding families of Farmers Branch. And then what we found later is that the developer got very excited about that center area and built a gazebo, and that space was not available. And so we had to kind of go back to Brookhaven, Dallas College, and say, hey, we've got a new opportunity. It's south of there. It's not quite as large, and what you've designed won't fit. And so we were very interested in the symbolism that the 5 founding families represented, and the students came back and said, there's 3 creeks that come through Farmers Branch, and we can fit 3 of these arches here. We started working with the developer. The person we were working with, that was actually on a steering committee that worked with the college, left the organization, so we had to find a new person that was somewhat unfamiliar with the project, and they didn't like certain elements, the orbs at the end, for example. And then they challenged the students to kind of colorize these and sent some pictures of things they've seen in other developments, and that's kind of how we got to the wraps on those. Trying to find a way to paint 13-foot tall sculptures became problematic for something particularly that was going to be long-term, so we found the shrink wrap. We've had a good experience of that with vehicles, and we can get those in very high resolution. So that seemed to work, and it kind of tied in with one of the mayor's art project about what do you love about Farmers Branch. And the students in their minds said, this is, when we think of Farmers Branch, this is what we think of. And we thought it was a perfect tie-in. The developer liked it, and it all kind of seems to fit. This, pending your support of this, we'll have this up by the end of the year.
So will there be anything, John, on the circle area closest to Valley View?
That's going to be a monument sign.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Baumgartner?
Yeah, I think it's great, echoing what other council members have said, and I support it.
Councilmember Blackson?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I'm sitting here thinking, and I like how your committee's been able to kind of change on the fly. It's my understanding that you've had some issues or whatnot come up, and I appreciate that. And, you know, I'm excited about this. This is something that I've been anxious for a long time, and now that we have it, we're finally moving forward. And you know, I look at it as the wrap component of it. That's something that allows us flexibility in the future. That if we want to have a hold a contest in a year or 2 or 3, we can, you know, do something like that and make it to where they, you know, we have community involvement or other artists involvement and come up with more designs or whatnot. And I think that's a great opportunity, but I'm excited about this. I really, especially the idea that it could be done by the end of the year. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ratana?
I just had one more thing. When John, when you were talking about what the 3 pillars represent, is there going to be something like a plaque or something on the floor or something that that speaks to that piece? Because I think that's a really interesting component of that.
We will find a way. There was originally, on the base plate, there was a map of the city that had different points of interest, and we were unable to, it became clear to us we weren't going to be able to get that done in the time frame that we had set out. We will find a way, either with a plaque on the ground or something on each of those pillars, to kind of explain that. But that's a great point.
Sure. Oh, thank you. Perfect.
Thank you.
Any more comments from council members? And based on what I've heard, everyone seems to be in support of moving forward with this. If not, I guess now's the time to speak. Okay. Once again, thank you for all your hard work, effort, and we're going to be excited to see this before the end of the year.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you. And then I guess now the second part.
All right. Okay, this is Matthew Peters. I'm going to let him talk. We've got a fantastic subcommittee working on the mural for the Firehouse Theater. Matthew's heading that up. He's had some fantastic ideas, Gail, Derek, and Brandon have all had some great feedback. So I am going to turn this over to Matthew and let him talk as soon as I can close this out. I hate to close out John's presentation.
Well, yeah, I would like to thank Mr. Land for putting my face
Yes.
on Mount Rushmore. It's something that I don't take for granted. Little pun there.
Get to the podium. PC.
So let me just briefly talk about what our subcommittee did. Earlier this year, the Art and Culture Committee created an all-call for artists. And there were people who either lived or worked in Farmers Branch. And we wanted to see what kind of art they practiced. And so there was a member, a guy signed up. His name is Scott Williams. He's an artist and resident and school teacher here in Farmers Branch. We reached out to about 6 different people, and we really liked Scott's concept of what he came up with. So we're looking at painting a mural on the west side of the Farmers Branch Theater. That wall is about 756 square feet. Scott was able to come up with something that the committee was really inspired by. Just working from left to right, we have kind of a throwback to the original intended use of the building, which was the firehouse, and so that's represented there. Also, Derek Whitener, who's the artistic director for the Firehouse Theater, coined a phrase called the beating heart of art, and it was very important to Derek that we not have a Valentine heart, but an actual beating heart, and so that's captured there. A little difficult to see, but there's what we call an Easter egg, or just a small little throwback to the the Wizard of Oz, and you can see that the Wicked Witch of the East's legs and ruby slippers are coming out of one of the heart valves. We tasked Scott with creating something that was at the intersection of visual, performing, and culinary arts due to the location close to the restaurant park. And so as we go further to the right, you can see that we've got some dancing chefs there. In the background is the set design for The Drowsy Chaperone, which is one of the theater's more recent productions. The chefs were originally holding knives, and it was looked a little violent. And so we changed those to pots, and it's really still not happy with that. So we're recommending 2 changes, that the chefs instead be holding food items, which could be like a lobster or a leg of lamb, something like that. And then you can also see that we've got a music staff above the chefs. And Scott said, if we want a specific melody, painted there, he'd be happy to do that. So I kind of went into my Rolodex of music and looked at something that was in the public domain that we could paint and that would be aesthetically pleasing, meaning that it stays on the music staff and would be rather easy to paint. And so we came up with the melody, or the theme, the Swan theme from Swan Lake, which is Tchaikovsky's, one of his favorite, or most famous ballets. And I wouldn't dare sing it for you. But it looks pretty nice, and it would be, if somebody was able to, sight read, or they could easily pick up on that. I like that it also brings the concept of ballet into this mural. And then as we move further to the right, you can see a strong reference to Singing in the Rain with people holding umbrellas, and just kind of that scene. So what we're looking for really, from a city council perspective of approval, is not incremental changes to this mural. We're on a pretty tight timeline, and that the funds for this mural need to be encumbered by the end of the year. We've also worked out that we're going to do a small reserve of funds that should the mural become defaced in any way, that we would be able to perform some maintenance, and the artist would be able to do that. What we really like about this is the artist was also on the lower end of our budget, so there's money left over to install lighting at night, and so that this will be lit and be seen, and be visible in the evening. So really pleased with the job that Scott did, and I think he captured the essence of what we asked him to do very well.
Well, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your work on this, and I'm glad that we were able to engage, a local artist, but also a resident on a project here, especially in our station area, which will couple with hopefully 2 pieces of art here relatively soon, so from 0 to 2 is quite the jump. Hopefully that continues, but I'm going to go in reverse order this time. And Councilmember Blackson, any comments or questions?
Well, I was just sitting here talking to a good friend, and I didn't see anything that I could say that like I think it needs to be changed, or I know we're on a tight time frame and all that. I like the creativity. I like the Easter egg with the Wicked Witch of her feet hanging out of one of the heart valves. I really like all that. I really don't think that there's anything that I would necessarily change. I mentioned to Charles, I said maybe put the old school, not our old logo, but the old fire trucks we used to had Farmers Branch written in kind of an old school way, like a 1950s way. Not a logo, it just kind of said kind of Farmers Branch, and then had like a FD underneath it. Maybe adding that to the truck, the side door, but nothing, nothing crazy or anything like that. But I think it's a fantastic, it was far more than I was expecting. I didn't really have an expectation, and this has far exceeded that. So I'm very grateful that it was a local artist and that they've been able to tie it all back to the city like that.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Baumgartner.
I agree with everything Councilman Blackson said. I think it's great.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Lynn. Okay. Councilmember Norwood.
Thanks for your work on this, but I was really disappointed that you didn't sing the Swan Lake.
I'll send you a link.
All right.
Councilmember Ratana.
I echo what, that was actually going to be my recommendation, but I like the way the placement is, just having Farmers Branch somewhere on there just for Instagrammable moments so people know where that mural is. And I think the suggestion for the fire truck is a great option. So that was my only thing, but I love it. I think it's great. Thank you so much for all your work.
Yeah, appreciate your feedback, and I think we can easily work that into the mural.
Okay. Other than that, I think you have full support from all of us, so yeah, good luck moving forward with it.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you. Next is A4, discuss the I-35 corridor vision study.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Kira McCardle, consultant to the Planning Department. I'll just get my presentation pulled up. So this item is a continuation of the This item is a continuation of the discussion that occurred at the joint meeting between Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission on October 12th. And just so you're aware, we did also have a continuing discussion with Planning and Zoning Commission last night. At that meeting, Interface Studio, who's the lead consultant on this project, presented their preliminary recommendations for the I-35 corridor vision study. Due to time constraints, we weren't able to fully discuss all of the questions that they posed at the end of their presentation. So at the mayor's request, we are bringing it back to further that discussion. The 3 main questions center around the vision. So the overall vision for the corridor vision study plan, as well as the vision for each of the 4 target areas. We're looking to see if the council is supportive of those visions or if they feel the need that any tweaks or adjustments be made. And then the second question revolves around how to invest to achieve the vision. 3 of the tools that were presented by the consultant were public realm improvements, incentives, as well as land assembly. And then the last question was what should the city prioritize within the first year following adoption? And I'd also like to say maybe don't think of it in the first year, but perhaps the first 1 to 5 years following adoption. This is a 20-year vision, so it's as we've said many times before, it's a marathon, not a sprint. If I could suggest, I'll go through the 3 questions and sort of review them with you with council, and then we can go back and have some time for discussion. So the first question, does council support the draft vision? So this is the draft vision for the entire corridor, and it is to view the I-35 corridor as the front door to Farmers Branch as a world-class place to live and do business within the Metroplex. It offers space and access and a wide range of businesses looking to grow and expand, a range of housing amenities for residents, and visually the corridor is an attractive gateway that reflects the city's reputation for excellence. Then for each of the 4 target areas, target area 1, if you remember, is on the west side of the I-35 along Valley View Lane, and it was viewed to be the front door of Farmers Branch's employment-centered, a work-centered counterpart to the mixed-use station area on the east side of I-35. So if you remember this discussion that we had around this target area, it was to sort of bridge the east and west sides of Valley View Lane. And when I-35 is redeveloped, there should be better connectivity underneath I-35 to help in joining the east and west. Target Area 2 is positioned to house large-scale businesses that need larger spaces and highway access. Warehousing, e-commerce, event spaces, and creative industries are a good fit. High visibility from the highway means a focus on incentivizing property owners, to upgrade facades and landscaping. So there doesn't necessarily seem to be a change in form in this area. However, the consultant's recommendation was that we really focus on the aesthetics of the area. So really work on the landscaping and the facades to help improve it visually along the I-35 corridor. Target Area 3, this area is proposed to be a creative district that offers medium and small scale companies a home. It's a walkable area, and it already is walkable within its current grid, with unique branding and marketing that grows organically from the station area. And if I could expand here a little bit, we did have a fair amount of discussion on this target area with the Planning and Zoning Commission last night. One of their main questions was, well, what's a creative district exactly, and what uses does that entail? And in our discussion with them yesterday, and we also talked about it with the consultant today, we're really looking at, for this area, not in light industrial uses per se, but sort of commercial uses that are small in scale, slightly more commercial in their form and their market. So we would be looking at small producers, uses with very few off-site impacts, no outdoor storage, uses where warehousing would not be a large component of the building footprint. So some ideas just to get your mind thinking are uses such as, perhaps a caterer or a baker, an artist, a cabinet maker, a clothing designer potentially. So it could be an incubator, a brewery, which was previously located in this area, and would really be a home to those small-scale uses. And it was also came out of the meeting yesterday, it was recommended by some of the commissioners that this south area, if you can see my cursor, that be changed to become a part of the creative district. And the goal in doing that would be to soften that edge between the station area and the creative district as it moves forward, and also create a better transition between the uses on the west side of Denton Drive and the residential uses on the east side of B Street. So that's just to give you some background on this discussion that happened. Moving on to Target Area 4, this area is a highly visible location for mid-scale commercial activities such as food and entertainment. Special attention must be paid to the North Stemmons frontage by incentivizing property owners to upgrade facades and landscaping. If you guys recall this, if council recalls, this is an area where there was some discussion in the meeting on October 12th. In this proposed vision, the consultant has proposed that the North Stemmons Freeway be sort of the front facade of the buildings. And there was some discussion as to whether they should be dual frontage with Denton as well. The rationale behind placing the frontage at North Stemmons is aesthetics along the Stemmons Freeway. And also, if you do have dual frontage properties with 2 front yard setbacks, you really are limiting the amount of developable land that each of these lots has, and they are quite narrow. So that's the first question for council to consider. The second is, how do you think the city should invest to achieve the vision? One of the first tools presented was public realm improvements. So are landscaping improvements something the city would like to invest in? Some suggestions that were given were in the I-35 gateway, perhaps taking advantage of green ribbon funding, at the north as well, where there will be some remnant parcels, and as Valley View Lane and Denton Drive redevelop in the future, if there's an opportunity to add some greening within the public right-of-way. And then also, is there any interest on council's part in any of these areas to pursue public realm improvements on private property? So that could be done through a change in zoning codes requiring an increased amount of landscaping, or through other investment schemes. Some of these tools do kind of blend, but would we like to incentivize landowners to green their property through another mechanism? In terms of incentives, one possible incentive program that was raised is the Facade grant program. We do currently have a Facade grant program, but is there any desire to explore the option of doing something more targeted towards the I-35 corridor or some of the target areas? Another tool that could be used is a pocket park program, where the city could develop parks or open space amenities on private land, and the city would maintain them. And then the last tool that was presented by the consultant is land assemblage. This tool does come at a larger cost than some of the other tools presented. However, it is a way for the city to really control how land is ultimately developed within the corridor. So if it is a tool that the city would like to use, are there specific areas where the council views that these efforts should be targeted? Then the last question is, as I said when I started, is what should the city really focus on within the next year or within the next five years post-plan adoption? And again, public realm improvements, incentives, and land assemblage, as well as zoning codes, are another tool that can be used for implementation within the short term. When you're thinking about this question, I'd like to remind council that, again, it's a 20-year plan, so it is a marathon, not a sprint. And also that the I-35 will be expanded between approximately 2022 and 2026. So there will be a lot of disturbance within the corridor in the short to midterm. With that, that's sort of the end of my presentation. I'm able to answer any questions, but we look forward to your feedback.
Mr. McArdle, thank you very much for your presentation. Councilmember Blackson, do you have anything?
I don't have anything at this time.
Okay. Councilmember Baumgartner?
You know, I think the presentation is good. I think when you look at priorities, as I-35 is being expanded, it's probably going to put some stress on some properties' original design, and there could be an opportunity to acquire some land. I think that is you know, a significant way to drive improvement. I think focusing on you know, the target areas 1 and 2, you know, would be to me would seem like the priority. You know, to move forward with it, but I'm in support of the program.
Thank you. Councilmember Lynn?
Thank you for the presentation. So one of the questions that was asked is, what should we do first, or how do we prioritize? And so in trying to think about this and moving forward, I thought obviously rezoning is probably the first step in my mind, how we move forward, and taking that action so we can amass what we're trying to do over the long term. Secondly was the land assemblage, because as property owners either sell, move, or businesses become non-conforming and the property can't be used for certain things, there might be some opportunities for us to amass more property to add to the existing holdings, if you will. Number 3, it was determining or creating some incentives, not only for the overall area whether that's a TIF or however that's done, but then also creating incentives for facade grants and things like that to upgrade the remaining properties, or at least provide some incentives for business owners to do that. And then the last part of it was the public realm improvement. And again, this is just one person speaking about this, but I was just trying to think, if we're looking to add, as you mentioned, pocket parks, that's going to create more of a maintenance responsibility on the city if we're responsible for that. Or if art can be added throughout the area, then maybe the TIF can assist in payment for that or commissioning those pieces. So that's sort of what I took we were supposed to do when in reviewing this. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Norwood?
I have several thoughts. The first one I wrote down as you're going through here is that creative district. I think I've got an idea of what that is, but and I really support it because I think that we would evolve that area into a much more vibrant kind of place. But the only comment I wanted to make on that is that we have to, as a city, be prepared for what that means. Because creative people come up with creative ideas that may be, some kind of paint scheme that we don't see in other buildings. It might be some kind of facade that's out of the ordinary. It might be, the different kinds of windows or a different kind of applique over their facade. So I think that's something that we need to be prepared for and to embrace, not to, if we're going to call it a creative district, then let's make it creative. Let's attract people there that want to do it different, and want to put a maker space there, or want to, have some kind of, dance studio or a brewery or something, and really, embrace that. And so I just make that as a comment that we like to, I like to, say, yeah, let's make it a creative space, but then put all these restrictions on it. And so I think we ought to kind of outline what that means on that creative space. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it goes to Terry's comment about zoning. If we're going to make that, then let's zone it in there so that people know that, hey, and then this thing, I can do this kind of thing because I've got an overlay here that says, yeah, I don't have to come back for approval on my paint. I can do it in neon green if I want to, and do those kinds of zoning changes so that it's available and we can publicize that and we can attract the people we want. On skipping to incentives, I wondered if I had a couple of thoughts. I like the idea of the public participation because I think that becomes an enticement and to change this pretty bland looking, area along I-35, we're going to have to entice people to make changes because a lot of these properties are fully owned and bringing in annual rent, and there's not a real need to do anything. Do we just let it kind of sit there and do what it does? And so I think that public participation got to be a part of that. We've done that in other areas, like on the creeks. We've said, hey, if you want to put in a wall, where the city will participate with you in that kind of funding. On Las Campanas, we had the wall there, and we did an agreement to pay to fund that to make it possible for the residents. So I think we need to do that. Just having heard the arts presentation, I think we ought to link it into the arts people. That if you want to do something in the realm of public art, then maybe the city participates with you or makes it a feature of that district. And then finally, I don't know if Allison's there, that we ought to relook our facade grant program and see if there's other incentives that we can do. Typically we do 10%. Well, that's kind of a drop in the bucket, especially for an area here where we really, really, really want somebody to come in and do something. So maybe we need to revise the incentive. Maybe it's not all cash. Maybe it's something else. Maybe, the city participates in upgrading their landscaping if they'll upgrade their walkways and their facade. So I think we need to look at that. I recognize also that the 35, you said, what's 22 to 26, that's 4 years, it's going to be a major disruption. And what happened the last time in the major disruption? Nobody wanted to do anything, right? Because what's it going to mean? I've got construction dust, and we've got different traffic patterns. And in this time, we're going to get a new exit. And so we're going to be able to filter people in. We want to attract that. And so during these times, I think that's a trigger with the businesses to really need to try to draw people in when the construction's going on. And so there might be a trigger point there where we can say, hey, this construction's happening. If you want to upgrade, we'd really like to do that, and we'd really like to help you do it. And now is the time to do it, and publicizing that and trying to draw people in to say, yeah, if I'm already going to get construction dust all over my building, I might as well, go ahead and towards the end maybe upgrade my facility. I agree with Councilman Lynn about acquiring land. I think we do. I would target Zone 1. I think that's the right place to do it. That's across the west side of Valley View. There's that remnant parcel where the gas station was. We've got 2 hotels over there. I know the city would not have resource to acquire the hotels, but partnering with the developer maybe to acquire those hotels, and then, adding additional land that the city might be able to bank, I think it might be a more viable way to proceed. But that's where I would go. We've already got the old El Mio spot that hasn't been had anything done on it, and so moving from that El Mio down to Valley View, I think, is where I would target. I don't know what anybody else thinks about that. And my last comment is, I'm not sure what rezoning looks like, but I'd like to find out. We did the rezoning so that we could finish the study, right? So we could finish I-35, and we did a few things. We said we don't want these kinds of businesses, and don't want outdoor storage, that kind of thing. But what are the other triggers that zoning can provide? Because I simply don't know, but I'd like to find out and get them in place as soon as we can. That's all I have.
Councilmember Rotana.
So I agree with a lot of what's already been said. I just did want to reiterate a few things. I think zoning is going to be a key piece. As already mentioned, one of the first things that I talked about with Tina when I got on planning and zoning was just the zoning and the barriers and the issues that we've had in the past, especially around this corridor. So I definitely think we need to resolve that first and foremost. As far as priorities and target areas, I echo the target 1 being the priority, and then going down to target 2 as it abuts the Mustang Station area, which is a big priority for us. Target 4, just because it also abuts the frontage road, which is 35, and then target 3. But I think organically, target 3, based on what's going to be going on in the Mustang Station area, it may bring some of those folks that we're wanting to bring in there. But I think a big part of this is going to be education from our staff to the businesses, and also really trying to find the right fit. To Councilmember Norwood's point, with I-35 construction, when all of that was going on off Skillman on the east side, it brought about a lot of vacancies. Unfortunately, right, just because of everything going on. And so I think that really looking at that land banking piece is going to be key around in the next 4 to 5 years, just looking at what's going on with the expansion. As far as incentives go, I think we do need to think outside the box and figure out what are some of these neat ways that other cities are doing to provide these really different incentives, and looking at these public-private partnerships. And with the Facade grant, really having our businesses, and again, this is an education piece, be better neighbors. And maybe it's not just focusing on one business, but really focusing on a group of businesses that we know are going to be there for a very long time. and offering neat opportunities for them to partner for some of these grant opportunities. So there's more continuity there as well. And as far as the public realm improvement, I think that the Green Ribbon Project is great. I think providing some of these really key pieces that really characterize Farmers Branch. And one thing that comes to mind is that big Texas flag that's on, I think, I-20 or I-30 that everybody always passes and they know exactly where it is. And that is just paint on some cement that was already there. Just really looking at some really innovative ideas to really bring about some sense of presence. So when you know that you've hit that specific, whether it's that, or whether it's a sculpture, or whether it's some type of iconic symbol, because it is a very busy area for us, especially with the new exit. But other than that, I echo a lot of the things that my colleagues said, and really looking forward to the next step. So thank you so much for all of your work on this.
Councilmember Blackson.
Thought you came to me first. I don't have anything to really add. I think this has been a fantastic process. I think we're learning a lot about what's over there, and we want to be over there. And it's kind of like an eye-opening adventure. We have a long way to go, but this is me to start and rolling forward the process to get this thing moving forward. And the way to do it is zoning. That's just the way to do it. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Baumgartner. I'm just letting everyone go back through one more time since everyone's spoken.
Yeah, I think that what's laid out here is a great plan and a great strategy, and we should move forward.
Councilmember Lynn.
So just want to recap something, because I know at one of the last meetings, I had concern that some of the zoning might be done in order to run businesses out of the city, and I think I had expressed that, and it was noted in the study session minutes. But when Councilman Blackson brought up that we don't need the ATV and motorcycle businesses over there, and there's probably a better place, it's just not right there for them. Can you just remind us that, I don't think I have to say this, we're not trying to run business out. This is a long-term play for the city, and that any business that is there right now has the right to stay there, even as long as they're in business. And so as we develop around some of these businesses, I guess, not remind us, confirm. As we develop around some of these existing businesses, they'll become non-conforming, and when those uses end, that's when the property use will have to change. Is that correct?
In accordance with the non-conforming provisions in the CZO, once that zoning change has happened, so to use the example of ATV uses or auto-related uses within the I-35 corridor, in most of the zonings, it has become a prohibited use. So those uses are currently non-conforming. They can stay there and continue to run their business until they leave. And in fact, the landowner has 6 months from the time they leave to get another tenant with the same use. So there is that 6-month grace period. So no, by no means are those uses forced to leave. They are allowed to continue operating their business as is until such time that business chooses to leave the area.
Okay, thank you. I just think that's a really important point to reiterate to folks so they know what's expected and where we're going.
Councilmember Norwood.
I think I've said enough.
Perfect. Councilmember Tana.
I echo that.
Perfect. Do you have everything that you need?
Yes, thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. A5, discuss future agenda items. Councilmember Tana. Councilmember Norwood.
Nothing that I haven't put on before.
Councilmember Lynn. Councilmember Baumgartner.
Nothing new.
Councilmember Blackson.
Nothing to add.
Sounds great. All right, I have nothing as well, so with that, we will recess until our regular meeting. The time is 4:23.